Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. My name is Sam Shalhoub, and it's time for your Daily Dispatch Special Edition. We have a recurring and returning guest with us, Dr. Peter Glidden. Dr. Glidden is a 36-year clinical, experienced, licensed naturopathic physician and author. And we've had him on the show many times. I, for one, am glad to see him back. Doc, good morning.
Sam, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate what you do and what you stand for. Honestly, if there were more people in the world like you, it would be a different place.
Well, there's a lot of us springing up all over the place, Doc, and something that you've been doing for many decades, and I am just my hat's off to you. So, all right, so let's jump right in, Doc. For people that are new to you and to what you stand for, will you give a quick explanation, a quick what it is that you stand for, how you go about standing for that, and some of the things that you've done?
Yeah, yeah, that's easy. I think that's a good place to start because, I mean, let's be honest, Sam, most people don't even know how to pronounce naturopathy, right? Let alone know what a naturopathic physician is. And that is because we have been underneath the jackbooted heel of a medical monopoly for over 100 years. So let me break it down for you. So I'm a licensed naturopathic physician. In order to become a licensed naturopathic physician in the US, I had to do 4 years of pre-med. I did that at the University of Massachusetts, and then 4 years of naturopathic medical school. I did that at the Bastyr University of Naturopathic Medicine in Seattle. By the way, both pre-med and doctoral degree granting institutions have to be accredited by the United States Department of Education. Okay. So 4 years pre-med, 4 years naturopathic medical school, 1,000 hours of clinical supervision, more or less. Then you have to pass national boards. Then you have to pass state boards. Then you have to get a license to practice naturopathic medicine. And then secure 25 hours of continuing education credit every single year in order to maintain your standing. And naturopathic physicians are trained in the same anatomy and biology and biochemistry and diagnostic techniques as the MDs are. But where we're different, and remarkably so, a remarkable difference is in our therapeutics and our understanding of how the human body works. And here's a kind of aha moment for a lot of people. Remember, perspective is important, right? That naturopathic doctors are trained to develop and deliver therapeutics which support and promote the body's built-in God-given ability to fix itself. So we attempt to cure the condition, whereas your medical doctor is trained in the opposite. Your medical doctor doesn't practice medicine. They practice allopathic medicine. MDs practice allopathic medicine, which is fantastic for trauma care, surgery, military field medicine. That's the wheelhouse of allopathic medicine. But for chronic disease, allopathically trained MDs are not trained how to cure disease. They're trained how to manage it. So it should be illegal, honestly, in a free, fair, and just society to say that medical doctors practice healthcare, because they don't. They practice sick care or disease management, right? Because under their care, number one, you got sick in the first place. And number two, the treatments delivered were not curative. So the blood pressure is not cured, it's managed. The depression's not cured, it's managed. The arthritis is not cured, it's managed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This
Well,
is,
Doc, could you define crisis care versus healthcare?
well, yeah. So when you're visiting a physician trained in healthcare, the therapeutics that they deliver are intended to make you healthier. Whereas crisis care, the therapeutics delivered are intended to keep you alive. So it's not the cardiologist's job to cure the heart condition. The cardiologist's job is to keep you from dropping dead in their office, right? So the blood pressure is not cured. It's managed. The congestive heart failure is not cured, it's managed. The symptoms are managed. The enlarged heart is not cured, it's managed. The mitral valve is not cured, it's managed, unless you go in with surgery. That's rather extreme. So, but this is what we've gotten used to over the last 100 years because of a medical monopoly, which was put into place in the early 1900s, right? And so
And
the
you want to say who put that into place?
yeah, well, it was a really interesting historical read. It was the Carnegies and the Rockefellers came together. They only came together and harnessed their resources together towards a single goal a few times. This was one of them. It was in the early 1900s that through a coalition between the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, that Congress was strong-armed, more or less, into granting the American Medical Association as the exclusive arbiters of who couldn't practice medicine. It was a hostile takeover of the medical marketplace fostered by the Carnegies and the Rockefellers because they owned petrochemical companies and, all of the drugs, well, back then were made from tar coal derivatives. So they wanted to corner the market on medicine in order to sell their medicines and to keep everybody else out of the market, and they were extremely effective at it. So they basically kicked everybody else off the bus of medicine. Chiropractors, the homeopaths, the naturopaths, the botanical medicine people, they were just, quacks, labeled as quacks with substandard dangerous training. And this medical myth, monopolized medical myth of the superiority of the MD method has persisted for over 100 years now. And it is, in fact, the cause of the chronic health disease epidemic. The medical
And
monopoly is the cause of the chronic health disease epidemic.
and prior to that, Doc, weren't we primarily more of a naturopathic, homeopathic nation prior to the inception in the early 1900s?
Well, it was a relatively level playing field. There were, I don't know, a couple of hundred homeopathic hospitals. The the busiest medical clinic west of the Mississippi was a naturopathic clinic in Spokane, Washington.
Interesting.
And why was it the busiest clinic? Because were extremely successful in their therapeutics. There were hundreds of homeopathic hospitals, and I think about 50 or 60 homeopathic medical schools. And, everybody was, wants more turf and wants more recognition and wants to kind of have the lion's share of the business. And so that's just the way that business is. But then the Carnegies and the Rockefellers come along, and with a broad sweep, legislative sweep, they cleared the competition. They just cleared the competition out within, I think, 5 years of the Flexner Report, which was the beginning of the monopoly, the medical monopoly.
What was the Flexner Report? I'm not familiar with that.
All right, so it's interesting. So this was, you know, back in the day when there was a level playing field and no medical profession had the upper hand. The Carnegies and the Rockefellers came together and they hired this guy named Abraham Flexner. And Flexner's brother worked for the Carnegies. So Flexner went around the country and his job was to do an inventory of all of the medical schools. And look, this was way before the internet. I think before even the interstate highway system, and a lot of Flexner's travels were done on trains and stagecoach, right? So Flexner went all around the country and did an inventory of all of the medical schools in the United States, the chiropractic schools, the naturopathic schools. There weren't many naturopathic schools, homeopathic schools, and the MD schools. And he brought that list back to the to the Rockefellers, I think. I get the two mixed up, but he brought the list back, and basically they used that was called the Flexner Report. They used the Flexner Report to gin up fear about substandard dangerous medical training. And so basically what Flexner did was he said, okay, so in Illinois, there's 20 allopathic medical schools. There are 5 homeopathic medical schools, whatever. In Nevada, there's so many allopathic medical schools and so many chiropractic schools. All he did was do an inventory of it. So he brings back the list, and the Carnegies and the Rockefellers used that list to gin up fear and promoted the idea that everybody who was not an MD All of the schools on that list who were not espousing MD allopathic pharmaceutical centrist therapeutics were practicing substandard dangerous training. It was basically a blacklist. And they convinced Congress, and I don't know how much money was passed in smoke-filled rooms. I have no idea. But there was a lot of shenanigans going on. And so, in any event, Congress passed a law. It's kind of like the same thing that happened with the Patriot Act, right? After the Twin Towers went down, everybody was panicked. Oh my God.
Right.
So they passed this ridiculous law that gave the MDs exclusive control over who could and who couldn't practice medicine, basically kicked everybody who wasn't an MD off of the bus of medicine, claiming it was through a feat of remarkable propaganda, which was unbelievably effective, that everybody who wasn't an MD was practicing substandard dangerous medicine and basically was a quack. And it stuck. And that's why nowadays, people look around and they see, well, son of a gun, the only medicine practiced in my hospital is MD medicine. The only medicine my insurance pays for is MD medicine. The only medicine my alma mater does research on is MD medicine. The only medicine they make TV shows and movies about is MD medicine. Therefore, MDs must be better at what they do than everybody else. I mean, that's a logical conclusion, unless you enter into that equation the data points of the medical monopoly, the hostile takeover. And so this is why we have a problem here, because people who are alive today, this all happened in the early 1900s before anybody that is alive today was born. So everybody that is alive today was brought up inside of the monopoly. And the
And they've
monopoly,
been programmed to believe things that just aren't true.
yeah, that's correct. And because it's a monopoly and people don't understand the history, they look around and they see, well, geez, MDs are everywhere all the time, so they got to be the best at what they do. That they must be. And that's a really incorrect supposition, and it's one of the leading causes of death in the United States is the false belief that the MDs are the sole arbiters of everything medical. And in point of fact, Sam, they're not. And I got to tell you, man, after 36 years of clinical experience, I am of the opinion that if anybody actually is practicing quack medicine in this country, they have an MD after their name.
Right. And, it's really a sorry state of affairs, Doc, because the people that have been programmed to believe those things, they're living in fear because they're ill. They're looking for answers, and those answers have been hidden for so long. That's why it's so important for people like you to step forward, to take
Well,
the
and
slings and arrows for people because they're scared. They don't know what to do and they don't know where to turn.
you are 100% correct. And that was one of the silver linings, I think, of the whole COVID shenanigans, was that people are starting to see through the chinks in the armor and, see through the smoke in the mirrors and pull back the curtain a little bit. Oh my God, you did this? Really? You did this? But it's a point that's well taken. And I'd like to take it even a little deeper, because look around. I mean, the title I've written 3 books so far. The title of my first book was Everybody is Sick. And I know why. You look around, everybody's sick. I mean, after you're 30 years old, you've got something, and you're on a prescription medicine or 2 or 3 or 4. And the older that you get, the more meds you're on and the more medical treatments you need. Why? Is that because the human body is frail? That the human body mind does not have the ability to make itself healthy? No. It's because the system of medicine that is in the monopoly that people have access to, their practitioners are not trained how to make people healthy. So under the,
Nor do they really want to, because then they lose a customer.
well, a patient cured is a customer lost, and that's the pharmaceutical mantra. And look, as a naturopathic doctor, I can prescribe drugs. It's not the gun, it's how it's used. It's not the drug, it's how it's used. Sometimes you need the drug. And thank God, all right, every time I'm in the dentist chair, thank God for lidocaine, right? And general anesthesia, fantastic stuff. But the way that the MDs use drugs is, number one, it's not curative. Number two, it's not curative. Number three, it's not curative. Number four, the longer that you take the drug, the more dependent upon the drug you become, the weaker your system becomes because the drug is not fixing anything. It's just kicking the can down the road. So under the care of the allopathically trained MD, as more time goes by, you get sicker and weaker and sicker and weaker and sicker and weaker. And then, oh yeah, you go bankrupt. Well, what's up with that? Well, I don't know. The leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States is medical bills. And the leading cause of death is MD-directed medical treatments. And since the MDs have been in exclusive control over the development and the delivery of medicine since 1912, more or less, chronic disease has gone through the roof. It happened on their watch. And yet, the monopoly is so vast and so overarching that nobody recognizes it as the failure that it is. It's the medical doctors' fault that we have a chronic disease epidemic. It happened on their watch. And it's not because they're sadistic human beings. It's not because they're malevolent, money grubbing. Some of them are, pharmaceutical lackeys. Some of them are. But it's because the system of medicine that they are trained in is non-curative and it is inconsistent with natural law. And under their care, you don't get healthy. You get sick care, not health care. And this is a gigantic problem. The Zen sword that will fix all of this, which I don't think Bobby Kennedy has the bandwidth for, although I hope I'm wrong, is medical freedom. We need medical freedom. We need a free medical market, right? We need the chiropractors, the naturopaths, the Ayurvedic practitioners, the homeopaths, the herbalists, the hands-on healing people, all to have equal access to medical insurance, equal access to hospitals, and universities need to be encouraged to do research on all aspects of medicine, not just allopathic medicine. This is what's necessary. Because in my
Well,
office, people get cured.
well, and I think part of the challenge for RFK and the Trump administration is that we've got somewhere around $4 trillion that's spent on healthcare in America. If you cured cancer tomorrow, or you cured a lot of these diseases, they would crash the economy. So I think they have to do it in a way that is palatable for everyone. You don't want to take somebody out of a drowning situation and beat them to death on the shore, right? So you want to do it in a way that doesn't cripple the United States or the world for that matter. But Doc, you a minute ago you talked about the diseases that are being caused or the ramifications that stem from allopathic medicine. And I
Yeah.
believe what you're talking about is iatrogenic disease. Maybe you could
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Well, if you so here's I think a better angle to go at that through. Okay. So if you were a physician, it would be prudent for you, don't you think, to have a working definition of health, right? Because if you don't know what health is, how can you possibly help your patient to secure it? And by the way, if you want to watch a medical doctor's head twist off its axis, the next time you're in their office, ask them to define health and see what they come up with. They won't be able to answer it, or they'll give you some juvenile explanation for it. But I digress. Health is the ability of a living organism to experience stress and remain symptom free. So here's the book of life. Here's how it goes. Life, by the way, is a great big bowl of stress. There's all kinds of stress. There's positive stress like exercise, right? But the stress I'm talking about here is called distress. It's negative stress. So microbes, that weather, aging, crap in the air, crap in the food, crap in the water, right? Emotional stress, financial stress, intellectual stress, all kinds of stress all the time are impacting the human body. Now, when a negative stress hits the human body mind, there are only two possible outcomes. The body mind defends it, and the stress bounces off, and nothing happens. Or the stress gets through the body's defenses, destabilizes the system, knocks the system off balance, and the system compensates and generates a symptom. So you can only have a symptom if you have been destabilized by stress. And a symptom can be anything. It can be a runny nose. It can be a headache. It can be heartburn. It can be a tumor, right? It can be a broken bone. It Can be difficulty breathing if you're an asthmatic, can be an enlarged heart. A symptom is a symptom is a symptom, can be depression, can be panic and anxiety. It doesn't matter. A symptom is a symptom. There are lots of things in life that can destabilize the body and generate a symptom. The body has a self-healing mechanism, right? This is the fundamental, by the way. This is the fundamental naturopathic construct, the foundation naturopathic belief that the human body knows how to fix itself. The human body wants to fix itself. The human body's trying to fix itself all of the time, but it needs help. It need to drink water, need to breathe air, need to eat food, right? But there's a lot of things that you can do in order to strengthen the body internally so that it is able to handle better the stress of life. And maybe that's a conversation for another time.
Well, no, let's get into that a little bit. What are some of those things that people can do? I think that's important.
Okay. Well, I'll roll back around to this, but I just want to finish this thought first. Okay. So when the body becomes destabilized by stress, so let's say you cut your finger. Okay. So, the stress of the kitchen knife was too much for the skin to handle, so it went right through it. Now you're symptomatic. You're bloody, it's inflamed, it's red, it's swollen, and it hurts. You're symptomatic. Now the body's self-healing mechanisms kick into gear. The body reestablishes balance, fixes the cut, and 7 days later, the body's healed it. All of those symptoms have disappeared. Well, where the hell did they go? Did they go to France for the weekend? No, they disappeared because the body was presenting the symptoms because it was destabilized, and then the body cured it. No more symptoms. This is how the body is designed to work. However,
My brother, Dr. Mike, used to call that innate intelligence.
and this is another of the fundamental naturopathic beliefs, which is a really interesting thing to think about because naturopathic medicine and all systems of holistic medicine, if you're an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, a traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, an Ayurvedic practitioner, it doesn't matter. If you're inside the holistic realm of medicine, you believe that the human body is inhabited by a spiritual force which is intelligent. MDs do not believe that. Your medical doctor does not believe in anything metaphysical. Your medical doctor is trained in a reductionistic worldview based on Newtonian physics, which argues if it can't be measured, it does not exist. So, since nobody's dissected the soul out of the human body, it doesn't exist. To the MD, interestingly, consciousness itself is a function of biochemistry. So when the body dies, the brain dies, the mind dies, it's lights out, game over. There's no such thing as life after death. There's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as the indwelling spirit. There's no such thing as anything metaphysical. It's all fictional folly because if you cannot measure it, it doesn't exist. So this is one of the reasons why the MDs are comfortable in not curing anything because they don't think that's possible. The rationale being, well, if the body could fix it, it never would have gotten sick in the first place. It's kind of convoluted logic, but nonetheless, there it is. So MD-directed pharmaceutical centrist, allopathic medicine is atheistic at its core. That's one of the reasons why their therapeutics fail, because the human body is inhabited by an intelligent spirit. It is. And if you don't understand that or respect that nor appreciate that, you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and all of your therapeutic interventions are going to be flawed because of it. It's an innate blindness that they have. So the medical doctors are like colorblind artists who don't know that they're colorblind. And they paint a picture of my family. Well, it looks like my brother, but the colors are all wrong. Well, it looks like my house, but the colors are all wrong. They get it wrong. The only time they get it right is in this metaphor when they paint with black and white, and then they get it right. And that's with surgery and trauma cure. That's the wheelhouse of the MD. But again, I digress.
Well, and again, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the majority of medical doctors go into the practice of medicine with the right intentions. Part of it is that they've been instructed incorrectly and they haven't been able to bridge that chasm at this point. Oh, you just went a little dark. There you go, Doc. So
Yeah, it's because
in
of
terms of,
their training. It's the training. It all goes back to the training, right? And then it becomes and another problem with modern medicine, Sam, is that there are very few medical doctors in private practice anymore. Most of them are members of a group or an HMO or something, right? They don't work for themselves. They work for an organization. So they work for a hospital group. They have standards of care that they must abide by. And those standards of care are fixed by guess who? The pharmaceutical industry and the insurance industry. So the medical doctor, even if they see the light and they don't want to do Prozac anymore, they want to do something other than that to treat someone with depression, they can't because their hands are tied by the contract that they have. And it's a gigantic problem. And we have Obama mostly to thank for that. Again, that's another story. But
well, and fundamentally, that whole foundation has to change.
you're entirely correct, right? But the MD, by virtue of their training, has a juvenile understanding of how the human body works. They don't get it. They have misinterpreted natural law. They're wrong in their assumptions about how the body works. And this is exemplified with the startling fact that the halls of MD medicine are littered with the discarded remains of ridiculous treatments, which in their day were the standard of care, right? Bloodletting. That's how they killed George Washington, father of our country, survived Gettysburg, for goodness sake, right? All the hardships of the Revolutionary War. He didn't have any teeth. He had wooden teeth, right? Survived all of this stuff, and then he got sick, and the medical doctors opened up his veins because they had to get the bad humors out of his body, and they killed him. But that was the standard of care. Why is that? Because the philosophy that the medical doctors bring to the table is corrupt. It's incorrect, but they don't understand that it's incorrect. So we go from one bad idea to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. But don't worry, folks. The cure for cancer is just around the corner. All we need is $1 trillion more research. It's ridiculous.
Exactly, exactly.
Right. Okay. So people go to a physician's office because they get stressed, destabilized, symptomatic, and stuck. Body can't fix it all by itself like it was able to fix the cut. Can't do it. So what do? Well, you got to go to the doctor. Okay, that's why doctors exist. Now, you bring a symptomatic, destabilized system to an MD's office, and they are trained to deliver therapeutics that suppress the symptoms. So you get an antibiotic, an antidepressant, an anti-inflammatory, an MAO uptake inhibitor, a proton pump inhibitor. You get a synthetic man-made pharmaceutical, the intention of which is to suppress the symptom. Well,
So
is
it's the
that
same
good?
principle when your engine light comes on in your car, you just cut the wire so you can't see it.
Or we'll put a piece of black tape over it. You can't see that. So this is a bad idea because nothing is fixed. And because the symptom was a compensatory mechanism by the body, when you relieve the body of its compensating mechanism, what's going to happen? It's going to fall further off balance and develop another symptom. But the medical doctors don't see the parallels between them. They don't see the cause and effect. And then you have to deal with the side effects of the drugs. And then you're done. You're toast because you're on the slippery slope to bankruptcy and death. And this is why we have a chronic disease epidemic, because the medical doctors who are in first place by virtue of the monopoly, who keep everybody else off the playing field, are not trained in how to cure disease. And under their suppressive treatments, the body gets weaker and more symptomatic and weaker and more symptomatic and weaker and more symptomatic, more drugs, more surgery, more drugs, more surgery, and then you die.
Well, you know, and it cracks me up, Doc, how you see these pharmaceutical commercials on television, and you were talking about, side effects. My God, we'll take this drug for your asthma, but ultimately you might be bleeding from the eyes, your ass may fall off, and a whole host of other things. How
Yeah.
people cannot hear that when they see these different advertisements just blows my mind. But I think it's an indication of what you said earlier, people being programmed to believe things that just aren't true.
Yes, because of the monopoly. And you know why the direct-to-consumer TV ads exist?
Money.
Well, because they work.
Mm-hmm.
The
They produce
pharmaceutical
money.
industry isn't throwing good money after bad. They're not dumping money down a dry well. The direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertisements work because people are not smarter than a fifth grader in this country, and they'll believe the happy, smiley, sing-along song for Zyprexa or whatever the heck it is, and they completely disregard the side effects, thinking, well, they have to do that because of legal ramifications, and that doesn't really happen all of the time. And if it did happen all of the time, the drug would be taken off of the market. And this is how people think, and they're wrong. And it's killing us slowly.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and the well, it gets much more insidious. I mean, with the everybody says, well, we need to Food and Drug Administration needs to do a better job. Well, no, they don't. The Food and Drug Administration's charter is to protect the pharmaceutical industry because the pharmaceutical industry is considered someone has considered or deemed it that the pharmaceutical industry is national security interest. So the
Well, part of
pharmaceutical industry must be protected, and that's what the FDA does.
well, part of that goes back to 1992 when they enacted the User Fee Act. And essentially what they did is they said, look, you're not the pharmaceutical industry went to the government and said, you guys aren't the FDA is not approving drugs fast enough. So we need some sort of fast track. So what happened, in my opinion and my understanding, is they passed the User Fee Act where pharmaceutical companies could pay in advance to get their drugs fast tracked. That has snowballed to the point now where the FDA, 50% of their payroll is paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. Is that somewhat correct, Doc?
Yeah, it's 100% spot on. And it's more of a problem, right? Because remember, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what we have in medicine. It's absolute power and absolute control. So in order to bring a new drug to market, it costs about $60 million. There's only about four pharmaceutical companies in the world that can afford to do that. So they've eliminated all of the competition by raising the bar, the financial bar for drug approval, number one. And number two, there are hundreds of drugs and pharmaceutical devices which were approved by the FDA that there are now lawsuits against because they're killing people. I mean, Vioxx was the most famous, but nobody went to jail and nobody questions the approval process. Well, I mean, once or twice if something slips through, that's understandable, but hundreds? You've got to be kidding me. It's a function of the corruption borne by the monopoly. I mean, everybody was happy when we deregulated AT&T, what, 30 years ago, because long distance phone calls cost $1 million a minute. That wasn't any good. Yeah, a lot of the monopolies aren't good, but everybody's completely happy with the medical monopoly. The only reason that they are happy with it is because they don't know it exists.
Right, exactly. You're spot on. So we've been able to kind of clarify where we're at now and how we got there. So let's talk a little bit, Doc. I know you've written multiple books. If possible, maybe you could give a quick synopsis of you have a new book that's just released, and everybody, I want you to know that you there will be links in the comments where you can get this book. You can go right to my website, samshalhoub.com. There's a specific button to get Dr. Glidden's new book. You even get a 10% discount if you go through my website. But will you get, oh, there it is right there. Great, Doc. And so, Doc, let's talk a little bit about solution. Let's talk a little bit about this new book. Let's give some people some hope here because that's what I think this is all about is truth
Well,
and hope.
yeah, 100% correct. And that's, why I get up in the morning, Sam. And for the last 15 years, in addition to my work with private patients in states where I'm licensed to do that and consultations that I do with people all around the world, right? I'm doing the doctor stuff, helping people to understand what they can do actively to recover their health because their body has the ability to do that. But in addition to the private work that I do with individuals, I realized a long time ago that there was a really big bottleneck It's gigantic. There's a huge bottleneck of lack of information in the world because right now there are approximately, remember, I've been doing this for 36 years, and I was around at the when naturopathic medicine experienced a renaissance in this country in the early 80s. And I was there when it happened. I was right on the riding the crest of that wave, right when it happened. So I'm very aware of the history of the rise and now the fall again of naturopathic medical therapeutics. And I would be comfortable right now referring a patient to about 350 of my colleagues. There just aren't that many licensed naturopathic physicians in the world who know what they're doing clinically. And because ironically, right around the turn of the century, the naturopathic medical schools stopped teaching pure naturopathic medicine because they became infiltrated by various for reasons that I won't bore the audience with, but the naturopathic medical schools started teaching green allopathic medicine, which was pharmacy first, the use of pharmaceuticals first, and then the use of naturopathic therapeutics to clean up the side effects that the drugs made. And it was completely ass backwards and reverse of what naturopathic medicine should be. Same with homeopathy. So there just aren't that many licensed physicians in the world right now that know what they're doing and that can actually help people. There just aren't. And, we need an infrastructure change. A colleague of mine is raising, I think, $10 million right now in Montreal to start a world-class naturopathic medical school there. So there is hope. But in the meantime, I've put together information gleaned from 36 years now of clinical experience, of my own clinical experience, plus, decades of clinical experience of a handful of my colleagues into paint by the numbers, self-help, health reclamation therapeutics. So you've got asthma. Well, you get the book, you turn to the page where it says asthma, and I tell you what to do. Oh, you've got asthma? Okay. You start here. Um, Here's what the MDs think about it. Here's what they think of what causes it. Here's what they do to manage it. Here's what the holistic doctors think causes it, and here's what we do to attempt to cure it. And I've got that for 110 different diseases. And we have delivered these therapeutics to 10,000 people that we've kept track of over the last 9 years. And 83% of them recovered. An 83% recovery rate just from generic
Wow.
generic
Wow.
information, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's a game changer. And
No question.
people should have been taught the stuff that I was taught in high school. They should have been taught it. If they knew what I know, if this was public health education, we wouldn't have a chronic disease epidemic because everybody's eating the wrong food all the time. They don't know that they're eating the wrong food all the time and it's hurting them. Everybody's bodies are completely undernutrified of essential nutrients. Their bodies just don't have the raw materials that they need in order to keep themselves running. They just don't. Nobody knows that. Supplementation is mandatory. And nobody understands that when the medical doctor intervenes, they're suppressing the symptoms and they're making you weaker. Nobody understands these things. And I've always said, because it's true, and this was a come to Jesus moment for me in my clinical experience, and it was extremely humbling. So years ago, it was probably 18 years ago, I would the most of the medical nutrition information that I learned was from my colleague Dr. Joel Wallach, and he was the author of an infamous audio tape back in the day called "Dead Doctors Don't Lie," right? Um, and I was at a lecture that he was giving in Kankakee, Illinois, and it was me and Dr. Wallach and about 80 people, most of whom were African American. And I don't think anybody in the room had greater than a high school education except me and Wallach. And people were standing up and giving testimonies about how they had recovered their health. And I was brought to tears. And they didn't do it in the context of a private visit with a physician. They stopped eating these foods. They started eating these foods. They took these supplements and then they added on extra things like a botanical medicine or something else because of whatever organ system of the body was affected that needed help. And son of a gun, they got better. My head exploded, right? And since then, I've been riding that wave of applied medical nutrition for the masses, right? I mean, everybody needs to drink water. Well, you don't drink water, that's a bad thing. So you should tell people to drink water. Okay. Everybody needs to breathe air. Well, that's a good thing. You don't breathe air, you're going to die. Everybody should breathe air. Well, as it turns out, there are three other things that people need to do in order to optimize their health. They need to nutrify their body. They need to, with the right stuff, they need to stop eating foods that are hurting themselves. And they need to treat themselves holistically if they do become destabilized and symptomatic. And it's all here in the book. That's why I wrote
Absolutely.
the book, to line this up for people. I walked them right through. It's a trilogy. It's a 620-page trilogy. The part one is the cause of the chronic disease epidemic. Part two is the cure for the chronic disease epidemic. And part three is my self-help health reclamation therapeutics. So,
Wow.
it's my way of, you know, dealing with the bottleneck here because honest to God, Sam, this is my testimony before the world. Most people dealing with a chronic health condition are suffering needlessly. They simply don't know what to do. And learning what to do is, is not hard. This is another of the myths that we've been, brought up inside of. Thank you very much, medical monopoly. That medicine is a complicated thing that can only be figured out by the straight A, students in school, the pre-med students, the 4.0 students. Only those people can figure that out. That's a lie. Surgery is complicated, right? I don't recommend that you try to do that on your own. You need training. But learning what to do to help your body heal itself is easy. And if you're smart enough to pass the driver's license test, you're smart enough to learn what to do, but you just haven't been taught it. And
Right.
that's why I exist, right? You were meant to be healthy,
Absolutely.
and I was meant to show you how.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also too, Doc, I want people to be aware when you go to my website, there are going to be two buttons for Dr. Glidden. The first button on the top right is Doc has compiled a website that answers a plethora of health and wellness questions. And if you click that button, it'll take you to his website. Spend, what is it, $20 a month or $100 a year, whatever it is, and get access to that website. And if that's not something that you're comfortable with, click the button and get his new book. That new book is a wealth of information. It is a plethora of things to do and what not to do. And like Doc said, detoxification and nutritional deficiency are the two main issues that I think Doc would agree are plaguing our society. So
100%.
so now you have an opportunity to take control of your life, to take control of your health, and to live a more happy, prosperous, and enjoyable life. So, Doc, again, I can't thank you enough. You've been on many times. I can't wait to have you on again. I want to dig into some other issues, but for now, I just want people to understand there is a solution. There's multiple solutions.
Yeah.
Two of those are his website and his book. And Doc, if you're open to it, I'd like to do a series of these with you over the next several months, and kind of dig down deep a little deeper into other issues. And if you're open to that, I think we can promise the viewers that even today.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Sam, because this is why I get up in the morning now. It's and my motto moving forward, I think for the last 12, 13 years, since this kind of has all come together for me, is that I don't want to give a person a fish. I want to teach them how to fish.
Right.
Because if you learn these precepts and these concepts and you start to apply them, you can help everybody in your family, everybody in your neighborhood. This is not difficult. Sometimes you need a private appointment with the doctor. Sometimes you do, but 83% of the time you don't. You
Right.
just need to learn what to do to give your body a fighting chance, for goodness sakes. And so I'm happy to, um, wave this flag as much as I can, and we can get into the details. We could really get into some details here with, different illnesses, and I think it would be eye-opening for people to understand the way that the medical doctors think about it. And it's interesting because once one of my gifts, I think, I will, wave my own flag here. This is from, the shameless self-promotion, right? I'm able to take what seem to be complicated medical issues and decomplicate them and explain them to people in easy to understand language. But that's another thing that happened because of the medical monopoly in the early 1900s. They mystified the practice of medicine and medical topics. Everything was in Latin now. And they did that in order to take it outside of the realm of the average human being. It's easy to understand this stuff. You just need somebody to help you do it. And well, like Doc Holliday said, "Oh, well, I'm your huckleberry." And that's
Exactly.
just my
Exactly.
opinion.
Exactly. I just hope you're not don't have a 6-shooter on you right now. But okay, everybody. Well, we're going to wrap up this session because I don't want to go too long. I want people to assimilate what Doc has just said. There will be links in the comments on every platform where you can find Dr. Glidden's book or you can access Dr. Glidden's website. And Doc, I know I speak for not only myself, but all of the viewers. I don't know how to say thank you for you pouring your life into helping other people live a better life. And I don't know how else to say it other than thank you. And I hope that you'll come on again soon.
Happy to help, Sam. I'm here to serve, and I appreciate your platform very much. Thanks so much.
Well, absolutely, Doc. You are most welcome.